So what does good editing look like? Well, I think most of us would probably have something like this in mind. And bad editing? Well, you know exactly what clip I'm about to show. Quite a while back, I watched Stream Junkie's interview with editor Joe Walker, who's basically cut some of the best films in recent memory, and he said this.
But actually, for me, the big impressive action scenes, the ones in Blade Runner, I would say took less time to cut, in honesty. The stuff that really takes your time is the intense scenes with two actors talking to each other. And sometimes I think a way of judging a great editor is whether they can hold your attention with just two people in one shot each.
And ever since that interview, I've watched every film with that in mind, and I also made 2 short films with that in mind. More on those in a bit. So after having heard what Joe Walker said, what's good editing to you? I think this is pretty solid.
Ich wollte sagen, dann sind wir zu zweit. Ich habe eine Pistole auf Ihre Eier gerichtet, seit Sie hier sitzen.
Und ab jetzt sind wir zu dritt. Und auf die Entfernung bin ich ein richtiger Frederik Zoller.
I rewatched Nocturnal Animals recently, a film that I actually really loved, but unfortunately this time I spotted some incredibly amateur editing errors. Just look at this scene.
Andy, you've been on that thing for hours. I thought you were the one who wanted to drive all night.
I did, but what are we supposed to do? Sing campfire songs or something?
Almost every single conversation scene in the film is 2 or more people standing or sitting, just talking. And they just cut between the 2 characters with absolutely no meaning in the cuts whatsoever. Also, there's no inventive blocking, no inventive camera work, it's just very, very generic. Now don't get me wrong, 2 people sitting and talking with the traditional shot reverse shot style can be incredibly compelling. Just look at this, or this, or this. So why do I say these scenes work and this doesn't? Well, let's take a look.
No. Do you like to be told what to do?
No.
Is your behavior erratic?
No.
Do you find interest in other people?
Not really.
Do you find it easy to be fair?
What did you notice about that scene that wasn't evident in Nocturnal Animals? I saw 2 things. Firstly, there is far less cutting. This scene is much more patient and just lets the actors act, only cutting to stress a line or to show a reaction. The second thing is that J cuts and L cuts are used. A J cut is when you hear someone's voice over the shot of someone else before you cut to the person speaking, and an L cut is when someone speaks, we cut to the shot of someone else, but their voice carries over. So in the editing timeline, it looks like an L. What this does is it creates a connection between the characters, asserting their presence in each other's shots. It can also create conflict because these cuts can make it feel as if the character is being interrupted. I did this in my own films. Look at this scene, which took me like 10 hours to edit.
ผมแก่แล้ว เวลาผมเหลือไม่มาก ถ้าคุณล้มเลิก คุณก็จะเหมือนผมในที่สุด
At first, all of each character's lines are only in their shots, but as they begin to fall out or come together, the dialogue overlaps. Or in another one of my films, characters start off connected by J and L cuts, but then the dialogue is separated as they begin to lose trust in each other. Now, I'm not saying that my films are better than Nocturnal Animals, because they're not. Nocturnal Animals is an incredible film with so much style and a complex story that definitely deserves praise. It's also beautifully acted. I know the cinematography here isn't anything incredible and the dialogue isn't exactly Sorkin-esque, but what I'm saying is that I feel I've put a little bit more thought into the editing of these conversations, giving them a bit more meaning and using the editing to help emphasize the feelings and intentions of both the characters and me as the storyteller. So what would I do differently with Nocturnal Animals? Well, firstly, I already talked about editing these conversation scenes to give them a bit more meaning, and I certainly wouldn't cut as much. Now, I was watching some interviews on this film and it really seemed like Tom Ford put a lot of work into every little detail of the film. The guy really cares. So maybe this generic amateur cutting means something. Parts of the film take place inside the book world, and maybe Tom Ford was trying to show this world from the point of view of the reader. But I thought about this and realized that when we're reading, we don't imagine cuts in our heads. If he wanted to portray the mind of a reader accurately, he probably should have done it in long takes. And also, how did this make it into the final cut?
You found my car?
They found it in a creek bed.
Which brings me to my second idea for improving the film. Shoot some of these conversations, especially the ones in the book world or in the flashbacks, in long takes. And then you can do the simple shot reverse shot stuff in present day. This would instantly separate each section of the film and also give the actors room to breathe. Look at this long take conversation from my film. It's not a long take because long takes are cool and impressive, well, partly because of that. We start off far away from this character and we move closer and closer as we begin to learn more about him. Once we get to about here, we have a much better idea of who this person is and we're closer to him, literally and metaphorically. And then we cut to the reaction shot to really stress the impact of the question. Again, my dialogue might not exactly be social network level, but there's some meaning behind the filmmaking, I think. This scene could have easily been done in the same way, starting off with a two-shot and slowly moving in as they rekindle their friendship. There's probably a lot more things you could do with the scene, but this is just a quick fix. My third way to improve the film is another editing technique. It's a much simpler one though. You see these beautiful establishing shots? Hold them longer. In the interview that I watched with Tom Ford, he said that he and cinematographer Seamus McGarvey wanted to contrast Susan's cold and distant world with the much warmer, grittier world of the book. But this message would be so much clearer if they had just held on to some of these shots for a bit longer, because if you cut this quickly, they lose meaning. To us, they're just a bunch of really beautiful random shots. Don't believe me? Believe the knee. Holding shots for longer does so much. It creates rhythm, atmosphere, it makes us feel as if we spend real time in this world, and it shows us how the characters behave in this world. It's such a simple thing, and I really don't mind if it means Nocturnal Animals is a couple minutes longer, as long as beautiful shots like this can be injected with meaning. My fourth and final fix is this. I mentioned it a little bit before, but make every shot and every moment count. Let's go back to one of my short films. If you haven't seen it, a quick summary: these guys are friends, this guy's a liar, and through his lies he's alienating himself from his friends. This is reflected in the blocking of the characters and the camera. I established that this guy's on the left and these guys are on the right to create a sense of opposition. Once this guy comes in and hears the lies, he moves over to the right, and instead of cutting between shots of the three, I pan so we get all three in the same shot to further that connection. As the lies get worse, this guy's position in his own frame lessens and lessens while these three remain the same. See? Meaning. So how could we apply this to a conversation from Nocturnal Animals? It's quite easy actually. Let's fix this scene. Some things you could do very easily are enhance the contrast between the confident, unwavering Aaron Taylor Johnson and the unstable Jake Gyllenhaal who's on the verge of a breakdown. Film all of Gyllenhaal's shots on handheld and do it as an over-the-shoulder shot so that Taylor Johnson is always in Gyllenhaal's frame, almost as if his presence is lurking its way into Gyllenhaal's shot. And with his shots, do it on a tripod so it's completely still. Have the camera positioned slightly below him so he's looking down on Gyllenhaal, and put him smack dab in the middle of the frame, and lastly, have him stare straight into the camera, you know, like all these iconic villain shots. As a filmmaker myself, I'm always watching films, learning from them, but also trying to figure out what I would do differently. And in the case of Nocturnal Animals, as great as it is, I don't think Joe Walker would be very impressed.